When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Put my hat up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Done.
And that'll be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. That'll be you, that'll be me, that'll be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. Good morning, everyone. Monday, May 8th. This is the week that we have a very special event, but it's also, another, at the end of the week, or beginning of next week is Mother's Day. So I just want to, say to all of my friends who have lost their moms over the past year, because we've had a lot of people who have now in that new situation of having to, the mothers have passed on, and it's always challenging. But as a 38-year veteran, a little piece of advice: find something to channel your energy on. Maybe you plan something, stay busy. But a reminder: when we lose people, they don't want us to be sad. They want us to be happy. Happy is all outdoors every single day. So on Friday, Mr. Wayne Frazier, Miss Pat Frazier, his wife, and their team, they pulled together this Maryland Washington Minority Companies Association annual breakfast. It's at Martin's West, and I have heralded it as the largest minority business event in the region. It is packed, Martin's West, from wall to wall, from the window to the wall. This place is packed, and their vendors, their business people, Black, white, Asian, Latino, everybody shows up for this event. If you're running for office, you don't miss this event. You can't afford to miss this event. Without further ado, we're going to bring up the man, the myth, the legend, and his team for the day, Wayne Frazier. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Doni. How are you today?
Allison, good morning.
Good morning, Doni. Glad to
Mr.
be here.
Wallace.
Good morning. Happy to be here. Truly a pleasure.
All right. And Mr. Harrington, I think you muted. You want to unmute that microphone?
Good morning.
All right. Mr. Frazier, the floor is yours.
Well, Rob, I'm so glad that you were able to join us. Andre coming from Chicago, and Allison from Dallas. We have an all-American crew, and Rob Harrington from B-More. Yes, Doni, this is our 20th, can't believe it, 20th annual anniversary Spring Breakfast and Minority and Women Business Showcase at the only catering hall in the region that can handle a group of folks like us is Martin's West. And once again, we have assembled a action-packed group of esteemed honorees who are worthy of the term champions of social economic engineering inclusion. They are from major corporations, they are from government, and we are just pleased that we can bring the two together for the one common goal of increasing opportunities for women and minority businesses in the DMV. We are so pleased.
So, Mr. Frazier, I just got to ask you this fancy term, socio-economic inclusion, or DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism. Come on, man. What's the real skinny? What is this? How to get Black people some work? I mean, is this the new buzzword, or is it something that's actually the way people live?
Well, 12 years ago, I was insulted when a lobbyist in the state of Maryland called me a social engineer. I said, what the hell is that? And then I embraced it because, Donnie, that's what we're doing. And that's what Stanley Black & Decker is doing. That's what Constellation is doing. Harrington himself with R.E. Harrington, he's incorporating that as well. So it's an inclusion of all of us who have lived and told in this country for centuries. It's an inclusion of us now. And that's the most important thing that term brings out.
Okay. Well, Allison, you look pretty smart. What's your take on this term, or this new way of saying we're going to let Black people in? I mean,
I'm glad to look smart. I think we're better together. We're better together in community as neighbors when all of us are at the table, and it's certainly true of business. And so we cannot thrive or flourish as an economy unless we have everyone operating at the same level of opportunity and excellence, which is why Stanley Black & Decker loves what Wayne Frazier and MWMCA is about, just rising all tides. We understand from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint at Stanley Black & Decker that the best minds at the table that have different perspectives, different experiences, that'll lead to the best innovation. And we all know that the best innovation leads to the best results. And so to your point about, is this a way of living? I don't think that we can move forward as businesses and as communities without this view and this lens at DEI within our businesses, our corporations, and our environments.
Very good.
Mr. Wallace, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll echo what was been said. And I think it's very important to understand that, it is more than just words. I mean, the only way we can truly level the playing field is to have economic inclusion, have diverse companies at the table to drive that innovation. And to do that, it's critical that we remove barriers, right? Barriers to entry. And so when, from a Constellation standpoint, in my role as a vice president of supply diversity, I've actually stepped into the role just a month ago, but we're evolving even the terminology of supplier diversity. And we're focusing on business diversity. And the reason I say that is because when you think about the collective around economic inclusion, it has to be the integration of what I would call your internal DEI focus, plus your workforce development focus, plus your supplier diversity. Because when you put those three things together, you're now driving economic impact and inclusion. And the truth of the matter is, when you can drive economic impact and inclusion, you can then influence policy, right? And so while we're doing that, that's how we want to elevate and drive the concept of economic inclusion to make it meaningful and make it stick. Because when we're at the table and we start to pour those dollars back into our communities, that's when we'll start to see a difference, because those dollars will equate to wealth, generational wealth, will equate to power. We got to level the playing field.
Mr. Frazier, I guess this is a celebration of progress that has been made. We think of the history, our history in this country, and considering this conversation today this certainly suggests that some progress has been made. Would you agree?
Oh, tons of progress, Donnie. I mean, when we think about when the original small business legislation was introduced by our own Senator Perrin J. Mitchell back in the early 70s. Congressman Perrin J. Mitchell, when Richard Nixon was a president. And then 1979, the first MBE legislation was introduced by our then state senator Larry Young under Governor Harry Hughes' administration. So you figure that's 50, 40 years of progress. Then you had the major lawsuit in the city of Richmond, Crowson versus the city of Richmond, that just undermined the entire MB, or should we say government set-aside program at the time. So we've made tremendous strides. Now, yes, we can do better, but we've made tremendous strides. And then you look at a brother like Robert Harrington, who came along as a just a young plumber, and then because of this type of legislation and this type of movement allowed him to become the largest African American underground utility company in Maryland, and I would venture to say probably in the DMV, because of the opportunities that were presented on the heels of those who came before us. We have these opportunities today.
Mr. Harrington, there were some hard-fought battles. Names like Robert Lee Clay, Arnold Jolivet, Randy Phipps, they come to mind. There were some difficult conversations. It didn't just happen. Would you agree?
Yes, sir. Good morning. And again, the gentleman that you just mentioned, all of those guys I knew at that time versus now. Those guys always offered you help, any resources that you needed for any young entrepreneur that was coming up. All of those guys that you mentioned, would take the coat off their back and give it to you just to see you succeed. And today, it's a little different right now. That help and that mentorship is not available right now.
And then, Mr. Harrington, you also make it your business to be an advocate yourself, correct?
Yes. So most of all of the little, well, I hate to call them little, most of the smaller firms that's coming up now, anything that I can do to help them lend resources, even go out and help them perform jobs. And I'm always lobbying to the city to, help the small guy. And I still consider myself a small guy, but I always lobby for the city to, cater to the homegrown contractor versus the out-of-town contractor with all the resources and the money.
Now, you say advocacy. You've been advocating for at least 15 years for a piece of legislation that has come to fruition even as of late. I saw you and Mr. Frazier about 2 weeks ago, and you were celebrating an accomplishment. You want to share?
Yes. So thanks to Mayor Scott, Director DPW Jason Mitchell, and Miss Dina Joyce from the Board of Office and Boards and Commissions. They have finally agreed to unbundle the multi-million-dollar contracts and make smaller contracts from $500,000 to $1 million, so the local MBE WB contractors can get a slice of the pie. So this, to me, is a game changer, and this will generate generational wealth for the smaller MBE WB companies in Baltimore City.
Allison, you know about unbundling?
A little bit. I think, Stanley Black & Decker is working its way to do its own version of that, and its own kind of giving a hand to smaller companies, women-owned companies, minority-owned companies. We've made a 10-point racial equity commitment a few years ago, Donnie, that includes tentacles around career, culture, and community. And part of our efforts inside of the community are multi-pronged. We believe that young people need an opportunity to go through school without debt. And so we're partnering with 5 HBCUs to give scholarship money so that our folks can get in position to start their own businesses postgraduate education. We're starting even younger than that with programming for young people inside of the cities that our main offices are in. For example, Hartford, Connecticut, Towson, Maryland, right up the street from Baltimore City. We call it RISE Community Program, where we just bridge the digital divide. We've sent Mac computers to almost 40 young people. We create virtual and in-person programming, teaching them about STEM, about business, about opportunity, vision casting, that they too one day can be a Wayne Frazier, an Andre Wallace, a Robert Harrington, or a Doni Glover, making sure they have that early. And then one of our big commitments, which aligns very much with what we're celebrating on Friday, is around supplier diversity. I heard Andre talk about it a little bit, but we want to increase our spend to 10% by 2025. And so we're inviting women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses to become suppliers with us. They can do that on our website, stanleyblackanddecker.com, search supplier diversity, and then sign up to get registered. So we're really taking some tangible, significant steps on a couple of avenues to create those opportunities that we think are critical to the results that we all want to see today in the economy for our people and our businesses.
Mr. Frazier, we're always advocating for women, but advocates like yourself have helped me to understand that while we're advocating for Allison and your wife and my daughter, some people, I'll just say it, they have white women out front who are really fronts for white men. How do we distinguish one from the other? How do we know we're helping women, but we're not cutting our own throats?
Well, Doni, I would say that we need to put that type of thinking, we need to lay it to rest. It may be that there are some cases where some white women are puppets to some man lurking in the background, but those women, those white women who get certified by the state of Maryland, Department of Transportation, I can attest that our state does a superb job in vetting those companies and ensuring that there is no significant or majority ownership by any white male or signatures to checking accounts or leases or notes, promissory notes, or anything that would give that person, that white man, a control of that business. So I can say if you're MDOT certified, the state has done a very, very good job in vetting that company.
Mr. Wallace, do you ever have to wrestle with that? You want to help people who need a hand up, but there's some people who bully themselves to the front of the line. And you remember elementary school, somebody rooted you. And, from the community, we don't like people rooting us, especially if we've been standing in line. And then, being black in America, I'll just keep it real. And Mr. Frazier, you wanted me to stay on the straight and narrow, but I'm a black man in America. When I walk down the street, I want to walk down the street like anybody else. But, if you're walking through the harbor, and there are people of different races, not everybody's seen. It's like we're invisible sometimes, Mr. Wallace. I feel invisible in America.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I will echo what Wayne said, and that is, working through legitimate certification agencies, right, that are doing their homework to really understand if, in fact, we're dealing with truly diverse companies is important. There's absolutely no doubt that there's going to be the outliers that are out there, but we can't plan for those edges, right? But as what we do, and I can talk from a Constellation perspective, when I talk about, how do you do business with Constellation, and what do we do to ensure that we're having legitimate, diverse companies? I always tell people to focus on what I call the 5 P's. That's position, to pursue, partner, patience, and persistence. What do I mean by the 5 P's, right? Number one, from a positioning perspective, you got to position yourself to be able to do business with Constellation, right? We have a system called Smart GEP. You go online, you get into that system. That's one way that we get to know who you are, right?
Smart GDP.
Smart GEP, right? Go out to constellationenergy.com, go into supplier diversity, you get the Smart by GEP. Now, as you position yourself, the next thing you got to do is got to pursue. You can't be sitting in the background, not knowing what's going on, right? You got to understand who Constellation is. Do your homework and understand the categories, right? We got over 92 categories that we supply, right? But you can't be outside wondering what it is. Come on inside. In fact, what we've done is we published on the site. Here's all the categories you buy, and more importantly, here's the buyer. Right? It's online. Go see who the buyer is. Go network, find out who that person is. So you're pursuing. Then you got to think about partnering, right? We're in the process of creating an ecosystem, right? You can be a big tier one, you can be in the middle, you can be in the low. Whatever it is, we got to create a complete ecosystem, be able to bring things forward. So there's going to be partnering opportunities, right? So you got to be in the mindset you don't have to do it alone. Get out there and partner. And then when I talk about being persistent and patient, right? Some of these things take time internally, but you got to be patient yet persistent, right? And so we do this, and then my team internally, when we look at, there's over 300 certifications that are out there. We tend to really want to focus on MSDC, right? We want to focus on the veterans. We want to focus on LGBTQ, disability in. Those that are really certain that, the $1 billion roundtable looks at, but doesn't mean we don't look at others, but we know, to your point, Wayne, those that really do the diligence to make sure that we're getting legit companies. So that's what we're doing from a Constellation perspective. Last thing I'll say too, though, is stepping into this role, just to say that we are, doing diverse, we're having diverse suppliers in. To me, that's not good enough. How diverse is our supply base, right? If I have 10 categories of Asian male owned, white women, Native American, African American, I track that, right? You can't just tell me we're spending over $500 million, which we do, on diverse spend, and it be concentrated in 1 or 2 categories. The diverse spend needs to be diverse across all classifications, right? So these are some things we do to make sure that we're getting the right people at the table and getting the breadth and depth of the diversity, so we're truly empowering the community.
Mr. Harrington, how important is it to your business to have an Allison, to have an Andre working at these Fortune 500 companies? How significant is it to you?
Well, for me, it's critical. And again, I'm based in Baltimore City, and our smaller, our African-American contractors, we lack resources. So you got bonding, banking, suppliers, equipment, and without resources or connections to acquire resources, we're always left behind.
Mr. Frazier, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. It's important to me because most of the companies that work here are, second and third generation. So the struggles that we have, their first generation family had already went through them. So the first generation companies that are here in Baltimore, they're the ones that are struggling to try to get over that hurdle.
They sure are.
Mr. Frazier, how significant is it to have an Allison and Andre working at these big time companies?
Well,
in the positions that they're in, I mean, guiding the ship, this is long awaited.
Well, this is symbolic in that this is our 20th year. I would say back in 2003, there was no Allison at Black & Decker, and there was no Andre at Constellation. And it wasn't many African Americans at any of those major corporations. So we've come a long way in just this whole social understanding in the culture of the corporations, for them to understand that we are a part of their consumer nation. I mean,
think you froze up a bit there. You want to pick up the ball there, Allison?
I'm happy to. This is a topic near and dear to my heart because, as Wayne was saying, I started with Stanley Black & Decker 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me in the construction.
It's significant because now we have our folks in key positions in these major corporations, and it flows down. It flows down throughout the corporation. And I venture to say in the next 20 years, it will have total.
Yeah, it is near and dear to my heart, Doni. I've had quite an adventure of a career at Stanley Black & Decker. And once I was given opportunity to showcase capabilities and my talents, I've gone from leading national sales teams to helping build an e-commerce business. I spent almost 3 years as chief of staff to the CEO. So we talked about kind of having the right talent in the right places. And sometimes it is white women, sometimes it is white men. But I think our charter is to make sure that where Black talent exists or minority talent exists, that they are getting an equal opportunity to showcase those things. And I do believe that's why I've been at Stanley Black & Decker for 20 years, because I've gotten an opportunity to do that in a big way. Currently leading the e-commerce business at the company, over $1 billion in business. And again, it's a stepping stone of a journey that's involved a lot of mentorship, a lot of sponsorship. And I'm really proud of the progress that the company has made from a DE&I perspective. And I consider it a personal mission now to make sure that I'm opening doors and creating conversations and helping lift others up so that they can have a chance to have a seat at the table. And I'll tell you what, Doni, the success rate is really high when you get, a woman or minority talent at the table. They deliver. And so I'm excited about the future. A lot of progress has been made, but more to go.
Andre Wallace, how often do we see a Black woman like Allison rise to such level in corporate America?
We not often enough. Let's say that. But to the points that's being made, that's changing, that's evolving, right? When you just think about Black women, you think about Black men across the board, there's things, let's just be real, right, that have impeded the ability to make progress. And those are the things that we have to tear down, quite frankly, right? If I think about it, right, we all know systematic racism, right? That's there. You can't unsee and undo what's there, right? What you can do is try to, help people understand the biases that manifest with themselves to help remove those. But that's a serious barrier, right? One thing I think about is just the lack of, and Allison, you mean the lack of diversity in leadership. Listen, when you have people that are in roles of leadership that are people of color, there's a different understanding. There's a different relationship. There's things where you can help others that aren't diverse understand how to think about that, right? To be able to help move people of color, Black folks up the ranks. How do you eliminate some of that stereotype of bias, or just, how do you increase networks, or just overall cultural barriers, right? I can't tell you the times I've sat on interview panels and there's a comment made that's just a lack of understanding culture. And if you don't have a person of color in the room to say, hey, when you hear this, you need to understand that.
Oh, you mean like, Andre, you speak well.
You speak well. Or here's I'll give you one where I was raised to be respectful, right? If a question's asked me, I answer that question. I don't spend a whole lot of time elaborating and going further, right? But I'm respectful in that sense. I've been in interviews where after the interviews happen, a colleague will say, well, I think that person was good, but they didn't really elaborate much on what they had to say. Whereas this other person did. I said, hold on. If you felt that they needed to elaborate more, why didn't you ask that question? Right? Why didn't you say elaborate more? Because if they're like me, that person answered the question you asked, nothing more, nothing less. So let's not hold that against the person, right? So in that moment, you're educating that person through some ignorance, that if that person of color who didn't understand some of those norms from where we come from, that's a person that just doesn't get hired for reasons that don't make sense.
Was it difficult for Constellation to take on this diversity mindset?
No, not at all, and that's one of the things that excites me. I've had a very unique career. I started my career as a management consultant at Ernst & Young. Ended up spending, did a startup company, took a company public after 5 years, went 507,000, lived in Asia, retired a couple of times, came back. I joined Exelon before it became Constellation because of the people, right? And when we split, there was the same, not the same, not everyone the same, but there's people that they're at the leadership team. In my role, I report directly to the chief administrative officer who reports to the CEO. Having that seat at the table with a company that is committed to DEI and committed to how do we change the culture, not just internally, but externally, how do we impact society? And then being able to be in a role like this where I can have influence is so important. Like I said, I've been extremely blessed, and to be able to give that back, and to be my plan right now is what we're building at Constellation cannot be dependent on an Andre Wallace or an Allison or it's got to be a systematic program that is interchangeable, agnostic to the individual, because it's a part of what we do, not a bolt-on, but a part of our fabric. So yeah, I love what Constellation is doing, and that's why I'm excited about this role on how we actually can influence and impact the community.
Well, we're glad you're there. There are 47 million Black people in America, and both you and Allison have a heavy responsibility. Mr. Harrington, any thoughts as you're hearing this conversation unfold?
I'm excited. The day is a new day, and as I tell the city, we're out excuses. Time is to put up or shut up.
What would you like to see more of, Mr. Harrington?
Well, inclusion. So again, as I ride the city all day, every day, and I see our people kind of sitting on the sidelines, and everybody but us is working and making money. I think the time is now for us to do what we're going to do, and the opportunities are there. And again, the city spends $3 billion a year, and it's a shame that we can't get a piece of that pie.
Allison, any thoughts on? I mean, you're an upwardly mobile Black woman here in America. Any thoughts on what we as a community need to do? I mean, with the father of a daughter, now granddaughter, I want to see them be able to succeed in corporate America if they choose. But I can only imagine what you see when you look around. I mean, like here in Sandtown, West Baltimore, we got Latinos doing the flagging. They putting the flags up, just basic jobs to shut down the street. But you look across the street and, I see 10 of my homeboys, 10 of my neighbors, 10 African Americans standing on a corner. Now, I know you don't want to get into, but any thoughts on how we can get back to, we used to hustle, Mr. Frazier. We used to work the hotel jobs, the restaurant jobs. We used to live 10, 15 deep. But now, Allison, a lot of us have arrived. We don't want to work hard anymore, Andre Wallace. We don't want to sacrifice. We want it now.
Yeah. It's an important question, Doni, and I love where you started about how we can invest in our young women, because I'm happy to speak on behalf of women here. Certainly everyone's story is different, but I think about kind of three pillars, if you will. I think exposure, and this applies to young men as well in our communities, but exposure very early on. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of resources to share experiences, museums, sit, right down the street from DC, go to DC and walk around and start to show our young people the possibilities, the art of the possible. I think that exposure really young, if we can really pour that into our young people, will light a lot of flames that perhaps are not being lit today. I think about education being the second one. And again, yes, absolutely tap into scholarships that are available, tap into programming in the community. But again, it's reading books together. It's watching the news together and having dialogue. How can we keep our young people engaged in what's happening around them and keep them curious? Some of the most brilliant strategists that I know are just really organically curious people. So not a lot of time, not a lot of energy, just investment. And then I do think Andre mentioned this in another way before. There's a spirit of resilience that we need. We don't overcome all the systematic racism inside of corporations, inside of our community without a little bit of perseverance. But the great news is, as a diverse people, we're used to that. We are conquerors. We are pretty tenacious and we're pretty persistent. And so I do think there's some door knocking. There's some linking arms with organizations like MWMCA. There's tapping into the programming that Constellation offers, that Stanley Black & Decker offers. We're growing in in the ways that we're serving up opportunities. So how do we keep tenacious and not take no for an answer? I think if we can do some of those things consistently for our young people in our communities, we'll start to see some of the dynamics change.
Mr. Wallace, what's the biggest give back that you like to talk about, the philanthropic side?
Oh boy, on the philanthropic side, that is something that at Constellation we are big on and we're proud of. When you think about a company like ours, I mean, we have over 13,000 people. We're in 48 states, including District of Columbia, Canada, in the United Kingdom. There's a lot that we can bring to the table, right? If you just think of the state of Maryland itself, we are the largest publicly traded company in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
And we produce approximately 90% of Maryland's carbon-free energy, right? That's equivalent of taking 1.5 million cars off the street, right? And so when we think about that, we also, from an organization perspective, and I'll just focus on Maryland, last year we did over 21,000 hours just in the community. We had over $3 million of employees donating to the community. When I think about some of the number of philanthropic activities, our projects, where we invest at, we do things like I don't know if you guys heard the Baltimore Energy Initiative, where we're helping fund folks that are unable to pay their utility bills, right, to be able to lower that down so they can actually afford it. Or we're doing Constellation E2 Energy grant. There's several things that we're doing from a philanthropic standpoint to really get at what we believe is how to create really a more, I would say, sustainable and equitable place for everyone from a future standpoint, right? So again, one of the things that excites me about Constellation is when you think about our footprint and our commitment and the dollars that we have behind it, we're able to get into community to be able to help better the community.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Wallace, because I saw that thing. It was a E2, the energy grant, and I said, well, because I have supporters like Mr. Wayne Frazier and Mr. Robert Harrington, and they buy these huge ads from me, I said, well, I'd be wrong if I went over there to get one of them grants. But then, since I have you on the phone, at what point do I feel not wrong? At what point do I say, well, you know what? I'm going to apply myself.
Well, I think that's it. And even when Allison was talking, right, resilience and just there should never be a why should I not, right?
Well, I'm not greedy. It's like I have a friend, out west and out in Portland, Oregon, and he's quick to live off of the government. Pays $40 a month rent, talks smack to me about how much money I have. But if I can do for myself, I will. But I'm saying at some point, maybe I should go ahead and get them food stamps, get that free check or something. To me, it's antithetical to being an entrepreneur, but I defer.
Well, I think about this, right? So what is one of the barriers that we have as diverse companies? Access to capital, right? How do you get capital in order to actually create and generate business, right? So from my perspective, there's two companies I've started, entrepreneurial, grants. I mean, these are things that are available, right? So my response would be, why not, right? If you have the ability to be able to grow your company in a way that creates generational wealth and you're seeking grants that are intended to help build your company, why not, right? In addition to being an entrepreneur. So the way I think about it, quite frankly, Doni, is is look at the entire ecosystem of how I can access capital. Because if my focus and my goal is to create generational wealth, whether it's a grant, whether it's a supply diversity person, whether it's doing something in the community, if those things equal my ability to grow my company, get after it.
Mr. Harrington, I see you nodding, shaking your head.
Yeah, I agree with him. I mean, anything that's available, you got to take advantage of it.
So, Mr. Harrington,
Yeah.
Harrington, tell us about your apprenticeship program.
So a few years ago, I started an apprenticeship program with Baltimore City Schools, and I went to the school system, and they allowed me to take kids from young adults from 4 Baltimore City public schools, and we train them in underground infrastructure and try to give them a better option than the street corner, college, and jail. So, college ain't for everybody. So we try to get these young adults, bring them in classroom time, and then we take them and we integrate them with the crews out in the street. So they have classroom training. We pay them a minimum wage. We feed them and we give them, provide them work clothes. And we take them out in the field and we train them on active infrastructure that's in Baltimore City.
Why do you do this?
Well, again, it's giving back. Again, I ride the streets every day, every corner I go to. I just see our people just hanging on the corner with nothing to do. So it's not for everybody, but I figured I would start with the younger generation first, the high school students, before they leave high school and end up on the corner.
Was the city supportive of this move?
Not at first. I had a lot of kickback, and again, I convinced the city would have to think outside the box. With all of the crime and killing that's going on in the city, the regular stuff that they do don't work anymore. So you're gonna have to go above and beyond to try to grab some of these young adults and convince them to do something different. Besides the hustler that's on the corner or the guys that's driving the fancy cars, you're gonna have to pretty much start from ground zero and build a new infrastructure.
Did you get discouraged at any point? Were you of the mindset that, wow, man, the city of Baltimore really sucks when it comes to including people?
No, not really. I mean, it's just a lot of layers in Baltimore City, and you have a lot of people that's been there for 30, 40 years, and they're just stuck in one place and they don't want to think outside the box. So,
but Mr. Harrington, I've seen these politicians knock on your door begging you for checks when they run for office. There's an election next year.
They still coming to get the checks, so the checks don't stop. I hate to say it like that. So pretty much, again, you just have to keep having that conversation, and you just got to keep having that conversation, and eventually looking at the news every day, riding down the street every day. And I think they understand that we have to change paths, and the old way is not working anymore.
He's being polite, Mr. Frazier. I know that the advocates, you guys have been out there all weather in front of City Hall. I still have a picture in my mind of Robert Clay wearing a plaid coat. We haven't worn plaid coats in 40 years. He had a plaid coat on in front of City Hall, and he was protesting more money for black businesses.
Wow.
Arnold Jolivet, too. Arnold Jolivet, he didn't have the plaid coat on. Matter of fact, he was real clean shaved. But he would put that law books out, and there would be trouble.
Well,
University of Maryland, he didn't discriminate.
All of it has to be intentional. And what I applaud Rob Harrington for is that his is intentional, and he's taking revenue from his business to fund this. Set up a world-class training room right in his facility. Provide the young people with clothing, safety clothing. Feed them, preparing them, and see this same model. Trust me, can be duplicated in our high schools for more vocational training. So it doesn't have to start with him. It could start in the schools, and then those kids can come out and then go through his apprenticeship or other programs. But we have to have an intentional change in our mindset for our political leaders to change course what's working or what they thought was the solution is not working. It has to start. And we should bring back industrial arts in our middle schools so that the young kids can understand what it is to handle tools.
I'm glad you said that, because we have a school system that has been cutting out these vocational and technical training programs. Edmondson West Side programs were getting cut. I mean, you sometimes wonder why things aren't all working together. The books say all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord. Why aren't all things working together for the good of our children? So here's a question to the panel. Is Baltimore a national leader? Or, and I'm talking about for Black people and inclusion, or are there some other cities who maybe give us something to look up to?
Well, I can only speak from Baltimore, but you have Andre hailing from the Windy City, which have been leaders, progressive leaders in minority participation and inclusion for years. So perhaps he can speak better on that. But from Baltimore's perspective, we have a long way to go. And I pray that our new governor, Westmore, will influence our leaders, just like he started this program to have this 1 year of service, public service after high school. But we need to bring it down into again, we need to have these industrial arts training in the middle school and more vocational training in the high schools.
Okay, Andre Wallace, you're from a city founded by a Black man, John DuPont DeSable.
DeSable, yep.
DeSable.
Yeah, I guess the way I think about it is a little more holistic, right? There's bad pockets in every one of our cities. There's good pockets in every one of our cities. I am a firm believer, and that's what excites me about programs like this, right? Like you said, yeah, I'm from Chicago. This is a Baltimore publication. Broadcasts go out, but from Baltimore, right? For me, the reality is this: the more that we can do this, bring the best and brightest from each of these countries, each of these counties, each of these states, right? Instead of recreating the wheel 1,000 times over, like Mr. Harrington's doing there, how do we take those nuggets and blend them together to make progress, right? I think one of the things that can be, it's not detrimental, but it slows our progress is we feel we have to do it alone, or we have to do it city by city, right? What is that nugget that made us successful in Chicago? How do I bring that to Baltimore, right? How do we think more holistically to integrate in order to move it forward? So that's more, I guess, where I'm coming from is, I sit in Chicago right now, and there's things that just irritate the heck out of me, right? But there's some good things, right? So how do we take the best of the best? How do we blend them together as leaders and take them forward? Every time I talk to someone, I'm doing this here, I'm learning, right? And those are learnings that it's my job to take back into community and then bring back what I've learned back to others, right? And I think if we do more of that, we're going to bridge the gap, and collectively the tide's going to raise for all Black folks, irrespective of city.
Allison, your home where you were born, that was freedom. I've been to the Niagara River in Lewiston, New York, where you cross that river over into Canada. That was where Harriet Tubman was. There's a place called Lewiston, New York. And there's a monument there. But you come from freedom. And even in Canada, there's Africville, an original Black township. What saith you as it relates to pushing the ball forward?
Yeah, I'm proud of the role the North played, certainly in our story for sure. But having spent most of my life in the US as a Black woman, I think my experience is framed by a lot of what the panel's talking about today. It takes more than one person. And that's why I love what our companies are representing today. I'm really proud personally of Stanley Black & Decker. It's one company in the story, but the way that our CEO, Don Allen, has committed to this work over the long term, I think will pay dividends that we're living in now and that we will see. and then listening to stories from my fellow panelists as well, just really encouraged about what Constellation is doing and Robert Harrington's firm is doing. And then, bringing it back together with a company like Maryland Washington Minority Companies Association, whose whole mission is to make sure that every day we do a little bit better. And so, I'm celebrating the progress and recognizing at the same time that we have a lot of work to do, but we can't do it alone. And I think we've got to celebrate our progress. You all were talking about the trades earlier, Doni, and I think about everyone's path looks a little different. So how do we pivot? Not everyone's going to have a college education. Not everyone's going to go on to have a master's, but they can do extremely well. And so how do we encourage our young people who aren't bent that way to spend 4 years at a school to go into the trades and to celebrate that and to show their friends their success? And I know Stanley Black & Decker kind of took a stab at that, encouraging seniors who had decided to pursue the trades to post their decision day. We celebrate a lot of things in this culture, but how do they post, hashtag trade proud? And so looking left and right and going, what can I do really, really well to add to this fabric of social economic inclusion? Partnering with Andre's doing really, really well, partnering with Wayne's and Robert's and yours. And I think that's what really moves the needle. And I recognize that while we have far to go, we've done a lot of things really, really well over the last several years.
So what's the goal, Allison? You want to be CEO or what?
We'll see what God has in store. I'm enjoying the ride. I get to work with some fantastic people every day. I get to add value to my company. I get to see growth. I get to be a part of a lot of different things. But, in the spirit of going as hard and as fast as I can for those who have done it before me, to honor them, and for those who come behind, I am going to run as hard and as fast as I can, and we'll see where it takes me.
Do they understand, Allison, that they have to afford you the opportunity to help empower another 1,000 Allisons?
They do. And it's part of the beauty of why I love Stanley Black & Decker. I really do feel like there is commitment from the very top, which I would tell you, Andre may say the same at a large company. You need the CEO behind you. You need the C-suite behind you to really move the needle. And I do believe our CEO, Don Allen, and his executive team really believe in the beauty of doing this right. And so I feel very empowered to run this race. I feel very encouraged to do the same. And I hope for business leaders who are listening that they can hear that example and do some of that at their own companies, because there are plenty of us that can do this work. But unless we have that support at the highest levels of the organization, you will not make a significant difference, which I think, again, Wayne's organization really challenges business leaders in the area to take a second look at how they're engaging.
Mr. Harrington, I know time is money, and you've taken a whole hour away from being the largest underground utility, largest Black underground utility company probably in the country.
No.
Your thoughts?
Again, I want to thank you for inviting me on, and Mr. Wayne for inviting me to his function. And, for me, it's just, at this stage in my life, I just want to give back to those who've been denied or didn't have an opportunity to get to the next level. So with all of the power and a little bit of money that I have left, I want to, try to take the young entrepreneurs to the next level. And as I hopefully in a few years ride back through the city, I can see more people like myself working and digging up the streets and installing new water mains, sewer mains, etc.
Can you speak to the concept that not everyone is going to get a master's degree, whereby vocational and technical training are equally as important?
Yes. So again, college is not made for everybody. And, as most of the young adults that I run into every day, it seems that the construction trade or hands-on type of jobs, they really engage in them. They just need an opportunity. And again, and most of the young adults that I run into are single parents, so they don't have fathers in their life. Not to say that's a bad thing, but again, as we bring the young adults in and we put them around grown men and, kind of tell them, pull your pants up, you got to brush your hair, you can't come in and smelling like weed. And it's some rebellion at first, and then after a few days, they kind of fall in line and you can see the attitudes change. And as we bring in other young adults, the first class that been there kind of, teach the young guys, hey, you got to straighten up before you walk in that door. And that's a good feeling for me. And again, I just want to pass the torch on to as many as I can before I leave this space.
Mr. Frazier, my daddy said, with a closed hand, nothing gets in, nothing gets out. With an open hand, there are endless possibilities. I'm very glad that we have Allison, Andre, and Mr. Harrington who understand that we stand on the shoulders of greatness. And our true greatness lies in our level of service, particularly to those coming behind us.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And let me close by thanking initially Allison, because she is going to serve as our MC, our Mistress of Ceremony, this Friday, the 12th at Rams. And
I'm
last
honored.
time we had a Mistress of Ceremonies.
And I mean, she is CEO type. She's president now, but you mentioned that CEO. But for her to agree to do this, that's significant.
Yes.
That is extremely significant. To come to Dallas and to head up our event is amazing. And then we move on to Andre Wallace. His company, Constellation, is being recognized as the most committed energy corporation in America for diversity and inclusion. And Andre is the vice president there, and he is committed to this. And we're so pleased that Exelon and Constellation split, and he arrived at Constellation. And he mentioned earlier that Constellation is probably the largest corporation that's headquartered, docile, here in the city of Baltimore. So we're very, very fortunate to have them here. And then last but not least, my man, Mr. Robert Harrington. I mean, there is no one like him in the DMV. He's generous, big heart, and he wants to see our young people succeed. It's a grungy business he's in. They're underground, dirty, soaking wet in water at times, and whatever else that's found down there. But it's a solid career, great earnings, great benefits, great opportunities. And I want to see more of us. I mean, I love others from other countries, but I want to see our folks from right here in the city doing that type of work. And Rob Harrington is making it happen on his own dime. And I bet you he uses any one of Stanley Black & Decker's Mac tools or any other tools that I bet you they in that ground with him with those trainees as well.
Yes,
So I mean, it just pleases me that we're here in our 20th year, and I thought 10 years ago we done honored everyone we could, but no, it continues on. And then next year, folks are saying, Wayne, can you consider our company? I'm saying, wow, this is amazing. The love that we're going to show this Friday the 12th is unequaled in America, in my opinion.
Allison, Andre, this being your first time on the show, anything that we didn't cover, anything that you want to get out?
Doni, it was an honor. I'm sorry, Andre. Doni, I just want to say it was an honor to be here with you. You are a master of your craft, and what a pleasure it is to know you. Thank you for your investment in the community and for raising such important issues. It was a privilege to be a guest here.
Yeah, and I'll ditto that, Doni, and I'll be tuning into this podcast. The excitement and joy of Wayne, thank you for inviting me to this, and as well as the event. But to be a part of this, just double down on why I decided to stay, not retire in this role, because there's differences we can make. And when I see other fellow brothers and sisters doing the same thing, the thing that I feel is missing is hope for the youth. This represents hope.
We thank you very much, and may the good Lord bless and keep you, and maybe you be able to open up even more doors for those coming behind. Mr. Harrington, thank you for your ongoing support of
Yes,
Black
sir.
USA and Be More News.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good morning, world.